Hi, I'm Francis Hellier, and welcome to my brand new podcast, Metaverse. This is a podcast for the future-minded, a series for anyone on the hunt for the next big thing and all its possibilities and implications. This is Tomorrow's World Today. With each episode, I will chat to those at the top of their fields, from futurists in crypto and space travel to forecasters in business and tech. Together, we will ask the question, what's next? Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Jimmy Chan, co-founder and chief executive of Oly Sport. The NFT blockchain-based horse racing platform allows players to buy, breed, and race virtual horses so gamers can race to earn within its metaverse. Prior to starting Oly Sport, Jimmy was CEO of Odyssey3D, a company which under his leadership grew to be in the top 1% globally within the virtual reality real estate space. As a student, Jimmy was originally known for hacking university applications and received 14 merit-based scholarships to study at Canada's most elite business school. He is also a previous winner of Canada's Young Entrepreneur of the Year award. Outside his work, he's an avid bookworm, advanced salsa dancer, African drum enthusiast, and barefoot trail running junkie. Jimmy, I don't know where to start with this. There's quite a lot of stuff to get through. It's a delight to have you on the show.
Yes, pleasure, Francis.
So,
that was an amazing introduction.
Thank you. It's an amazing set of points I had to go through. So, first of all, how do you have the time for all this, Jimmy?
I guess where most people spend on social media and on Netflix, I don't find those as engaging. So I do dabble into some rather esoteric interests.
Well, let's start back at the beginning where it all began. Let's take us back to university days and this comment I made about hacking university applications.
Okay.
Is that legal? Is that legal?
Yeah. No, totally. It totally is. Everything is kind of already open book. In fact, what I know now, it might have already been commonsensical knowledge today, but it was pretty kind of closed books back then. But I guess it started when I was 16 years old, and all of it really had to do with my rebellious nature as a kid. So if you can imagine, 16-year-old, you're like grade 10 in Canada, and all of your friends are getting jobs, and having a Chinese mother and that kind of parenting style, she very much pushed me to get a job. And I didn't want to at first, but I ended up getting one. Ended up paying pretty well. It was like $20 an hour. Minimum wage back then was $10. But I think immediately what I realized when I started work, and that was probably like the first and last of like formal job that I had, was I didn't really prescribe to this idea of trading time for money. And for me, what I realized was that time for me is priceless, right? Maybe I was egotistical to think back when I was 16, but what I soon realized was I wasn't happy getting the salary that I had. And I just wanted to find a way to just like optimize that potential. And also just flex my creative energy and business interests. So I ended up starting a business back then. We ended up having 12 employees tutoring students in STEM. So that kind of opened my eyes up, because from making $20 an hour, which was already really good for in that time and age, I ended up having an opportunity. Like every phone call I had, I ended up calculating it ended up being about $100 to $200. So that's when I started thinking, I'm like, okay, so there's absolutely no correlation between time and money. Like this is up, like the sky's the limit. And I guess that experience set me up to think even bigger. And close to the time where university application came about, and in Canada, the process is that you have to write like supplementary applications and essays to get into schools. So I obviously wanted to get into a good school, and given that business background, I thought a business school would be perfect to just learn how to be a business leader. I guess I got a little bit obsessive, and I found a way essentially that where I can basically optimize. It's a numbers game, right? So like, for example, if I think that there's a 10% chance that I'll get a scholarship and I send out 100 applications, and I'll get 10 of them in, right? And the challenge back then was that no students were really interested in this type of this field, right? Like a lot of students were really stressed out in school. I already optimized that back in back grade 10, grade 11 time. So I wasn't spending a lot of time in school. I was getting the grades because of the systems we set up, and ultimately we found a way to. I ended up applying to like 70 scholarships, man. So getting 14, that's a pretty shitty score, but nonetheless, it's like it's a numbers game, like I said. So
You
that's
did
a little
it.
background. So, but I would like to say, I guess just an overall and just pertaining to this entire conversation is, and we can talk a little bit more about this later on, but for my entire life, I felt like the overriding theme that I've really embodied to live by is this overall ethos of rebelling against crowdthink, right? So, back when your classmates wants to get a job, I wanted to have a business. Back when everyone wanted to apply for university, I want to apply for scholarships, and onwards and onwards. And now it's like, into the whole blockchain scene and the metaverse. So I guess for good and bad, right? Like it comes with a lot of suffering, comes with a lot of pain. It comes with feeling incredibly lonely sometimes. But it also has given me some of the most craziest stories to tell and some of the most, I guess, adventures in my life, right?
I think that's right. I think that people who are entrepreneurs, they don't fit the mold, do they? They're different from everyone else. It's a strange position to be in sometimes, especially when you're younger. You feel like you're different from everybody, and you challenge. It's challenging because I think that school teachers, for example, want you to fit a particular category. They want you to follow whatever career advice, and they want to peg you into that particular slot. And sometimes it doesn't work out that way. And the most inspiring entrepreneurs are those that just are different and do things differently. So let's go back to your current role at Oly Sport. And can you tell us a bit about the sort of founding journey and how you got to where you are today?
So after Odyssey, my past venture, I think to understand Oly Sport, one must first understand at least the gist of why I created Odyssey, right? So actually really connecting to the previous story of, going back to university, after the whole 4 years, what I realized was that business school wasn't going to teach me how to be a business leader, in which was what I wanted to learn. So coming out of it, I realized that I really had to take the learning on my own hands. So I created this company on the premise of being my real world MBA. But beyond an MBA, which I feel like was lacking in so many dimensions, I wanted to lead in a holistic way, right? So in the positive light of today, you see a lot of corruption, right? You see a lot of fraudulent activities. I wanted to learn how to be a responsible business leader. So the premise of Odyssey is based off of a Greek poem, which is in essence a hero's journey, right? It's a story of a king becoming a king through his 10-year-long journey, facing obstacles, slaying both outer and inner demons in order to rediscover himself and rediscover his potential back into ruling his kingdom. So for me, Odyssey, that company was always about that story. And I guess as I progressed, I found myself in this position afterwards that I felt no longer challenged from the obstacles that I was facing in that company. And simultaneously, COVID was happening, and we all know kind of how that's panning out. So I had this seed embedded in me to say that, how can I take the person that I've become through this Odyssey and really contribute something meaningful back to the world? So it was with that desire that sparked the intention of Oly Sport. And I can tell you a little bit about Oly Sport. And given your introduction, I think it's fair to say that Oly Sport is a horse racing metaverse. But really looking at that concept, it's like acknowledging the tip of the iceberg, but not really seeing the entire iceberg itself. So what's underneath the water comes with 3 dimensions of disruption. So first and foremost, like I said, back to the COVID story, it broke my heart seeing so many people unemployed, so many small business owners losing their jobs. And I guess the positive spin, in which we talked about previously. So the intention of this metaverse we're creating, we want to create a home so that if people were to lose their jobs, whether to AI, to COVID, or whatever cause, right, or even investors wanting to invest full time, they can literally play video games for a living, engage in our metaverse for a living. The second full disruption is that we are creating a crypto economy in order to replace and in our way amend a lot of the government economic regulations and traditional banking structures that we believe is corrupt, inefficient, and highly bureaucratical. We want to revolutionize and change these fundamental concepts and building structures of society. And as the last point, we are the first metaverse to launch that will connect virtual land, right, in-game NFT land with real land, backing the two together. So in a way, we will democratize land ownership so that it's not, in Toronto pricing, for example, to get a house, it's like $1.2 million, right? So it's oftentimes very prohibitive for people to invest in this in what would arguably be the most I guess valuable asset to invest in the world. We want to be able to democratize those concepts. So that is Oly Sport in a nutshell. But in collection, it's really my play to take all that I've become, right? And this goes along with everyone's Odyssey, everyone who has now become the Oly Sport family, for us to really contribute a legacy to leave behind this world and to form this unifying tie that really connects us as a global collective so that we can actually face the challenges that we have ahead of us.
Amazing stuff. Now, listen, let's dive a little deeper on this. This is a blockchain-based gaming platform that you've created where we mentioned at the outset, buyers can breed, buy, race virtual horses, and that they're represented by NFTs. Can you explain a little bit more about how exactly that works?
For sure. So think about the entire horse racing industry, right? Whether it's racing horses, breeding horses, owning virtual land, or rather real land and having stables to house these horses, raising the horses all up from like pony all the way up to adulthood, all the way up to actually organizing horse racing tournaments and being owners of horse racetracks. So all of that we are creating within our in-game crypto economy, right? So what I just mentioned, there's a couple of classes of play styles, professions within this game, Metaverse. You could either have something to do with horses, right? So the breeding element, the racing element, the raising the horse element. You can be virtual landlords so that you can create passive income off the land, right? Be it farming food for the horse or having horse stables, or you can be an in-game business owner. You can incorporate and create a business entity with, in the form of a racetrack. And just like a real business, you have your board of directors, you have your CEO, CMO, you have your marketing staff, your PR team. And if you promote these races well enough, then it could be very lucrative for these players, right? This would be the most, I guess, profitable profession to have. And lastly, because we are very sensitive to kind of the current economic structure in that it's pulling a lot of the money from the poor and up to the rich, right? Like we see more billionaires quadruple their wealth while, the regular, guys and gals were losing their jobs, right? So we want to create the fourth profession, and a big emphasis of the game is on virtual employees. So these are people that may not have the income to invest necessarily, but they can participate in our game nonetheless by helping other professions, taking care of their horses, their stables, their businesses, and really contributing on the very foundational level to the metaverse.
Do you think that the way you're describing what you've created has that social element? You mentioned about offering people jobs and income. Do you think that that's a fundamental part of what the metaverse will become?
Fundamentally, yes. I do think that, the metaverse is nothing without the people, right? And I think a lot of GameFi projects right now, and one thing that we are taking very seriously is that no matter how good what the product that we're creating, right? We can create the best metaverse, but if there's no community, if there's no players, participants, then it's nothing, right? So I think fundamentally it's the metaverse. See the beauty of this, and with the DAO structure, right? The decentralized autonomous organization, which is how we are structuring our initiative, is that it really decentralizes the decision making, right? So in the past, where you have how are people governed, right? How are people organized? They're organized by a government, and the government is only a select few individuals making all the decisions. Right now, you've kind of reversed the pyramid on its head, right? Where Oly Sport and the DAO entity is the foundational element, but it's all the players that get to create what is ultimately, or what Oly Sport ultimately becomes. And I think that's very interesting, and has never been made possible until the technological foundations of NFTs, blockchain, and tokens, and so on.
So why horses? Do you have actually an interesting background in real life in this area?
Yeah, for sure. So I think I have a two-pronged answer for you. So fundamentally, horse racing is what we would consider a timeless sport. So when we conceptualize this, again, it came from this pain point that I had, right? It was a general discontent in society, nothing specific about horses, but we wanted to pick a concept that was timeless. So there's a lot of games, right? There's a lot of projects right now in the GameFi community where it might be a really hot game, but it doesn't have a staying power because of how it's structured. So this is why we chose to play in the intersection of esports and metaverse. So there's not going to be an Oly Sport 2, but we're going to just constantly iterate and improve this concept. And in terms of a theme to pick, I mean, what better theme than one of the most ancient prehistory dated spectacle sports, which is horse racing, right? Older than soccer, older than any sport exists in existence today, right? And just the I guess the global appeal as well, right? It's horse racing is such a huge phenomenon. I'm sure, like in the UK, in US, and especially in Asia, right? APAC regions. So yeah, and I think the final element is that all of our development team, they have extensive knowledge specifically pertaining to horse race games. They've already developed 3 games in the past in a similar kind of context, obviously without the blockchain foundation, because it's like, like they've been working on other games for like the past 12 years. So I guess it's like a perfect alignment between strategy, experience. And I would say the last thing is I personally love nature. So I want to do something involving animals, nature, something related to that. So that's the triad.
Excellent. Now the horses have a bloodline and genes to pass on, which reminds me obviously of CryptoKitties back in the day. So can you talk us through this process and how that works?
So the racehorses have 6 bloodlines. 3 of them are out currently in Binance NFT. And to give the audience a sense of scope, obviously, I guess it's not, I don't even need to say this, but Binance NFT is the most exclusive NFT marketplace out there. It's one of the hardest to get into. And since launching, we came, I think last time I checked, we're the top 6 all-time NFT sales.
Amazing, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you so much. So we have 6 bloodlines. And how it works is that the ones that we're selling is the Genesis breed. So these are the rarest, right? And there's only 30,000 available in the market, or like not in the market today, but we have in kind of within the gaming ecosystem. So once these are released, they would go through a breeding process, just like CryptoKitty, as you mentioned. Similar, but with nuance difference is that we have a genotype algorithm that basically takes the parent properties, right? So the mom and the father, and on top of that, adding on a random mutation, right? So it could be something that could potentially make the gene of the offspring substantially even more rare than the parents, right? So it gives you like a random chance element. So that's kind of how we do the breeding within the game itself.
Now, looking at the racing side, how are the results calculated, and how can players actually race to earn? How is that achieved?
Okay, so first of all, I want to mention that we're not a gambling game. Okay, it's often, I guess, confused just because people associate horse racing with gambling. And I'll tell you 2 things, right? So one is that we want to be a global brand, and having gambling elements is prohibitive to enter a lot of countries because of the legalities and the cultural element. So yeah, so we don't do gambling, and how players would make money is that there's a fixed fee to participate in races. So let's say if there's 10 horses that can race, and it's a fixed fee of 50 Oly to participate in these races. So now we have a purse value of 500, whereby 80% of that would then go back into being awards for the first, second, and third place winners, whereas 20% would be given back and putting into to improve the crypto economy and the overall GDP of the economy we're building.
Now, let's go back a step. So prior to Oly Sport, you were CEO of Odyssey3D, which I think you'll agree is a leading company in the virtual real estate space. Can you talk a little bit about your work there and what you've achieved?
So again, I think a lot of it dates back to the premise of why we created this game, this project, or the company itself. And I think especially for young entrepreneurs, a lot of people get trapped in this mindset of just becoming a unicorn. Right? There's a lot of kind of buzz in Silicon Valley with, in any startup space, and even incubators. The only intention is that you either, become $1 billion worth company, or, you die trying, essentially, right? So from the very beginning, what we realized is that we didn't want to play that game because it wasn't really about disrupting the world, were, you know, like creating this like mammoth of a company, we wanted to take this as a tool for us to learn. So we structured it in such a way. So I would say that Odyssey3D is a hybrid between a startup company, right, taking on lean mindsets, right, like the lean startup mentality, agile frameworks, but also combining it with a lifestyle approach. So having said that, we implemented remote work many years before COVID even started, right? So we've been operating probably like for 2 to 3 years completely remote. And by completely remote, I mean, we could go off, you know, in separate countries, you know, different employees can, we basically have a policy that 9 months within the year, employees can work anywhere in the world. So we've had that implemented from the beginning. So as you can imagine, when COVID hit and everyone was scrambling to work remotely, like, and find policies for that, it was just, you know, business as usual for us. So as we progress as a company, we brought the 3D virtual reality experience into the Toronto market. And as we opened that market up, obviously we took that as the first mover advantage to gain initial market share. And as our company grew, so too did our experience and also kind of the scope of work that we wanted to do. So we later on expanded into social media work, into like custom projects for commercial, for universities. We've done like airplane hangars. We've done like custom modeling for like private jets, drones. And really just the benchmark of how we gauge success is like, is this fucking cool? If it's not, we got to change it up. So yeah, and then yeah, it was a good experience. Like I love to say, like, it was always the company I wanted to have in my 20s. And I think the benchmark there is that you know, like I come from like a traditional corporate business school background, and all of my classmates, they're like, you know, working for like big five banks, big four accounting firms, and just everyone's looking to like maximize their income, and you know, like irrelevant of what the job scope is. But for me, I guess the difference in the approach is that I've realized that for the first 10 years of my career, I just as long as I don't end up in jail, it's fine. But it's it's just to optimize learning, man. I wanted to go on this journey of just like self-discovery, and by the time I'm 30, like I think, and right now I'm kind of transitioning into that mode, is the empire building mode, right? I want to create something that lasts, a legacy that kind of like can scope the world in a better way. But yeah, I think it's important for people to kind of pick their poison, as I would say, right? Like figure out what they want, and therefore what is the 1,000 things that they're okay not having.
Okay, if you end up in jail, Jimmy, I promise I'll come visit. So it's I'll bring you a cake or something. You know what's fascinating about this, I think, is the vision behind Oly Sport. It's not just about game. It's about you know, helping humanity get ready for this new era of blockchain and the metaverse. What can we all be doing to help that journey along?
I would say that as of a year, 2 years ago, we've really seen, I guess, the darkest sides of a potential trend that we can go into. And as of today, because we're, you know, slowly recovered from that, both psychologically and I think inertia-wise, we have a very important decision to make. And this decision can't be deferred any longer. We have been deferring it. So the decision that we have to ask ourselves is, do we want to live in a world that we're confident and proud to give to the future generation, to give to our kids? And it's very much with this question. And, you know, like both my wife and I, we're still a young couple. So we're planning to have kids, but it was that apprehension. I wasn't comfortable having kids in this world, and therefore Oly Sport had to exist. So I would ask you the same question, right? If the answer is no, if you're not comfortable where you're at, you don't need to be the one to save the world. But what are you doing to be a part of the solution? And I would say that, see, I constantly have this inner battle, right? I say like it's the battle between the hermit archetype and the king warrior archetype, whereby the hermit in me simply just wants to fuck off and just live in a mountain.
I feel you.
You know, and I'm an introvert myself, so it's quite easy for me to just, you know, like just, you know, leave, and, you know, just books are free nowadays, so I can just like read books for the rest of my life and I'll be very happy and content. But I think there's this such inner pain in me seeing what's happened today that compels me to do something. And I would like to say, like, all of us, we live the life that we have today only once. So what type of life do you want to live? I think it's almost like, sometimes I feel like I'm going insane because a lot of my peers and people I've grown up with, they're still concerned of what I would consider as the mundane. But again, I'm projecting, right? They're concerned about their income. They're concerned about making, buying the nicest car, right? Paying off their mortgage. But I think just how, from my understanding of exponential growth patterns, because I'm a technologist at heart, right? I'm an entrepreneur at heart, and taking that same growth model and looking into a lot of the global issues that we have, it's very clear that a lot of these mundane concerns is completely irrelevant, because you're not going to have that concern, like quite literally like 10, 20, 30 years from now, if we don't change up how we're behaving in the next decade.
Agreed.
So yeah, my ask really is just consider these points, right? And Oly Sport is really one person's play, right, to solve these, but there's a lot of people trying to do good things. So support these projects. Yeah.
Jimmy, what are you're obviously a visionary, and I'm really enjoying our conversation, but I just wanted to ask you where you see us going in the next 10, 15 years. What are the technologies that will be fundamental to our lives?
So look, I think we talk a lot about technology, and truly, like, I'm sure your guests will have a lot of feedback on that. And I will say, I guess maybe like a summary of that. It's very clear, like blockchain, metaverse, like we need these unifying concepts because we have global issues now. And if we're separate, there's no way we can solve it, right? We'll end up having bullshit plans that's proposed by the UN that really doesn't move the needle forward, right? We'll have ambitious goals set for 2050, 2060, 2070, and we'll basically not move anything forward, but politicians will keep continuing talking bullshit. So I would think more fundamentally beyond technology, which is really very much a tool, we need to fundamentally shift and move to a new global paradigm of thinking, right? So this paradigm, I would say, is to realize that we are not at war with each other, nor are we at war with technology, right? Nor are we with technology at war with non-technology, right? So I think there's a lot of polarity. Rather, we need to connect our thinking into a unified way of understanding the world. And I think more importantly, to just realize that we're in it as a collective species, and we need to have a collective solution to really move everything forward. So yes, so I would think like the next 10 years, like I'm an optimist. So I think that because of COVID and how it's isolated people, it's really given people opportunities to really think about these issues and have these as existential questions that they need to find answers for. And I think the answers are coming up little by little.
I can't let you go without talking about the salsa dance and the African drumming, the barefoot trail running, all these rather marvelous things I wish I could do. So tell me a bit about that before we wrap this up.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think that kind of fills the gap between what I did in those 4 years after getting those scholarships and before Odyssey. So essentially in those 4 years university, I've realized quite early on that I fucking hated university, man. It was just a process of memorizing slides, regurgitating them, and then forgetting them 3 months later with context and content that wasn't even relevant in today's world, right? I realized that I was either going to drop out or I had to basically reinvent education. So having very kind of like uptight, like type A parents, I realized that it was easier for me to just reinvent the model and customize my degree versus versus dropping out. So I work with faculty within my school to basically position it so that we can actually create a custom course just to scratch my own itch, so that I had an opportunity with some classmates to essentially backpack Latin America. I ended up extending this for 2 out of the 4 years in my undergrad. So half the time when I was in school, I spent just like traveling the world, doing odd jobs. I interviewed the past president of Guatemala in Spanish. Obviously picked up the Latin interest in salsa, bachata, merengue, all of that. Trekking down south, and ultimately kind of just traveling the world and doing weird things, right? Helping Asus Computers launch their multinational brand because they're a Taiwanese company. in Latin America, like speaking Mandarin, English, and Spanish. And finally, where that took me was Israel, which is for people who don't know, it's there's people say it's a startup capital, right? Startup nation, because per capita they have 7 times more entrepreneurs than anywhere else in the world, including the States. So I ended up going there with a couple of engineers to study technology entrepreneurship, and long story short, that was the birth of Odyssey3D.
Jimmy, last question, because I know we're conscious of time now, but last question is, what does the future hold for Jimmy Chan?
What does the future hold? Well, right now the market's pretty shit with the whole crypto downtrend. So I'm taking a pretty kind of like a stoic mindset when it comes to kind of pursuing the future. I think right now I see this whole journey as really a vehicle for me to just realize how do I become the best leader I can, the best CEO, right? And oftentimes, especially what the past couple of months have told me, given the market trend, is that I can't control everything, right? We were on track to become a unicorn quite literally this time. Like right now, we should have been a unicorn if we kind of followed through the trend, but then the downturn happened and everything got shot up in the air. So I think for the coming next little while, I'm leaning into a lot of kind of the mindfulness practices myself, trying to be the most resilient leader amongst these uncertain times. And I very much tell people in our company that, at the beginning, sexy, right? We raised like $2 million in like given a month, right? One of the fastest fundraising ever. And in the end is quite nice too, right? You become a $50 billion Axie Infinity. But it's that messy middle that it's fucking grueling, but it's inspiring as well because it builds character. And I think both I'm grinding my teeth through the process, but I'm also in a sadistic way enjoying it because it's this process that's going to make me enjoy the end so much more. So that's all I have to say, man. That's the future for me. It's just continuing doing what I'm doing every day.
Amazing, Jimmy. Thank you so much. You've been listening to Metaverse with me, Francis Elliott. Thank you to my guest, Jimmy Chan, for a fantastic conversation. Tweet us at Metaverse Pod with any suggestions or feedback. And if you enjoyed the podcast, please do share a link on social media. You can sign up to receive an email when the new episode drops at our website, metaverse.fm.